Hi, welcome to FilmSauce. I'm FilmSauce, and in this Saucy video we're looking at Dune, released in 2021. Directed by Denis Villeneuve and written by John Spates and Eric Roth, Dune shows the story of a boy in the sand who has dreams. And spies. Throughout this film, I'll also reward or negate source points, and at the end of this video I'll tally up how sourceful this movie truly is. Now, let's watch this sand movie. The film starts off with a quote read out by cavemen, followed by logos. Once in the actual story, we see the desert of Arrakis, which by night has been harvested, much to the hate of Zendaya's people, the Fremen. The harvesters are the Harkonnens, who exploit this desert world for spice, therefore becoming richer than the Emperor himself. Talking about the Emperor, he now kicks the Harkonnens off Arrakis, but who will the next oppressors be? Well, this man, Willy Wonka, who just had a short dream of Arrakis, but I'm sure that doesn't matter. Anyway, this man here is Atreides from the homeworld of Caladan, and on that homeworld our boy Paul eats breakfast with his mother, Lady Jessica, where they talk about the day's ceremony, and they explore one of Paul's powers, which is plus 10 charisma / the voice. Except Paul has a few powers I'll quickly list off. Prescience, ability to see past, present, or possible futures, and with increased exposure to spies, his power levels increase. And Brahma Pindu, he can control his muscles, and not much of power, but Mentat training, with a Mentat being a human calculator basically. Now we see Paul doing his homework on Arrakis, with him researching the people of the world, who are the Fremen, who share the desert with giant worms. Also, with large exposure to spice, these Fremen have characteristically blue eyes. Now we find out why everyone wants spice, and the simple reason is interstellar travel, which would be impossible without it. Now it's time for the ceremony, where a big egg lands, hatching to reveal some of the Emperor's people, court guys, and a sister of the Bene Gesserit, which is what Lady Jessica is, and the reason for the powers her and Paul have. But what is this ceremony for? It is for the House of Atreides to go to Arrakis, replacing their Harkonnens. After the ceremony, guess who pops up but Jason Momoa? Duncan. Now Paul confesses his dream to Duncan, where he saw Duncan with the Fremen. That's good, but also, he saw Duncan's lifeless body dead in battle. That's not so good. God, I sound like a Marvel character. Now Paul talks to his Pop from the hit movie Star Wars The Last Jedi. Anyway, Papa wants Paul to be as safe as possible because he is his heir, but Paul doesn't want to be the future of House Atreides. But Daddy, being a good father, respects the growing boy. Now we cut to Paul's training session with Thanos, who immediately almost stabs Paul's leg into the table. They prepare to train with cool shield gadgets that only break when someone slowly hits. Now we watch for a few minutes as Thanos basically beats up Paul. Now we cut to the Harkonnens, with a very angry nephew cursing out his uncle Baron, who is big-boned. Angry nephew Rabies is very mad about everything they built on Arrakis was just given away to the Atreides, but Baron tells them how the Emperor who ordered this is a very jealous man, and it seems that a plot is coming to destroy the Atreides. Back to the Atreides, a mysterious ship shows up, inside being the Bene Gesserit. With this being seen by Lady Jessica, makes Paul go to his doctor, where Jessica tells him how the old lady known as the Reverend Mother, who was seen at the ceremony, wants to see him and talk about his dreams. After the doctor's visit, where the doctor tells Paul to tread carefully, Paul goes into a room with the Reverend Mother, who shows off the power of the voice. Now Paul does the YouTube thing by putting his hand in the box, but Reverend Mother gives what's inside the box away immediately, just saying it's pain, and he can't remove his hand from the box or he'll die from a needle pointed at his neck. Now the pain begins, with Paul in pain, but don't worry, Lady Jessica prays for him because praying always works. Paul now looks into the Reverend's eyes with his dreams flashing.
Today's Valentine's Day. To me, I call it Independence Day.
Reverend Mother ends the box trial. Now Paul tells Reverend about his dreams about Zendaya on Arrakis. But hey, who wouldn't be dreaming about Zendaya, am I right? Anyway, I just love this scene, honestly, and is what really got me hooked into this film when I first watched it, so +2 source points. Now outside, Reverend Mother and Lady Jessica talk, with Reverend explaining to the audience how Paul shouldn't have been taught in the ways because he is male. They also talk about Paul possibly being the one. Paul, hearing all this, kind of just gets confused and questions Jessica, who says that there is someone out there who supposedly is the one, with powers powerful enough to bridge space and time. But now, as the water rises, we see it's time for the Atreides to travel across space to the dreaded Arrakis. Once at Arrakis, the Atreides are met by the blistering desert and some people, including Zafir, who is one of them human calculators. But now as the native people see Paul, they all yell out Lisan al-Gaib. But I'm sure that doesn't matter. Paul and Lady Jessica enter a cool flying vehicle which flies them off to the city, which just looks like a dusty version of the city in Blade Runner. Settling down in the big-ass castle thing, Lady Jessica looks through the housekeeper candidates, where she chooses a lady with a weapon. But don't worry, it is meant as a gift, with the knife being a crysknife. And the housekeeper moans a bit, gives the gift, and we cut to the next scene of Paul being called Lisan al-Gaib again, and talking with some guy about trees. Paul, doing his homework again, like a good student, learns about the sand walk, a goofy walk done by the Fremen, so worms can't find them. And during this homework, Paul sees a small flying drone that tries to kill him, but Paul catches and smashes it, with the pilot of the drone being found in the walls of the castle, planted 3 weeks ago by the Harkonnens. Talking about the Harkonnens, we cut to their planet again, where we see Baron and Reverend Mother talking together about an attack on the House of Atreides. Seemingly will happen, but the Reverend asks Baron to keep Jessica and Paul alive, and just to exile them. Baron agrees, but after Reverend Mother leaves, he says to Polka Dot Man how Arrakis will handle the two when they dump them there. Back on Arrakis, Father and his council explores how the Harkonnens left barely anything behind for the Atreides, sabotaging them. But hey, Duncan is here, and after finding some Fremen who agree to meet with Dadster, who hands out a deal for the Fremen, but they don't shake on it. The next day, the gang meets Dr. Liet Kynes, who in the film is a woman, unlike the book where Kynes was indeed male. Cinema is woke, oh my god. Anyway, the doc checks the integrity of Father and Thanos' suits, but when she goes to check on Paul, she sees his shoelaces were tied correctly, and thinks that he is the chosen one. Now the gang roll up on the spice harvesters, but oh no, a worm appears, so the harvester must be picked up and carried away. So no biggie. Oh no, one of the cables to pick up the harvester isn't working, with the worm only getting close to eat up a crew of 21. Father decides that he and the other 2 aircraft with him will drop down to save the crew of Thanos and Paul going out to help. But the desert spice hypnotizes Paul, sending him into a state of constant visions. During this scene, we get full force of this film's amazing music, +1 source point for that. Back to Paul, he is shaken out of the visions by Thanos, and now we see the full force of the worm, and I know some creeps out there want to put their dick in it. Shame on you. Paul, after a doctor appointment, tells his mother about his vision, where he saw Zendaya guide him around a rock formation, where she kissed and murdered him. He also saw Lady Jessica with sick new tattoos and a baby, but he can't know of that yet, apparently. Now we see the caveman from the start blessing the Emperor's army with a sick chant of sacrifice people. An attack seems soon, except that doesn't matter because now we see Jessica and Father talk, where Jessica tries to tell Father about Paul's gift, but he doesn't want to hear it. He wants to hear that she will protect Paul no matter what. Later that night, 3 guards are paralyzed, and on one of his night strolls, Father sees a murdered lady. But oh no, Father was shot and now paralyzed, with the shooter revealing himself as the Doctor. Now the shields are down and alarms are blaring, with soldiers running outside to see they again attacked, with the city being blown up. as well as ships getting blown up, leaving the people stuck in the war zone. But hey, Thanos is having a good time. Now Doctor apologizes to Father, saying he had to betray Father because Baron stole his wife, but in good faith, he gives Dad airborne poison that he will use on Baron. Now the Emperor and Harkonnen's soldiers are in the palace, with Duncan fighting his way out to an aircraft where he flies away with everything being blown up. But oh no, Paul and Jessica were kidnapped and put on an aircraft themselves. After an hour of build-up, I'd say this all-out war scene really worked for me, +1 source point. Back to Paul and Jessica, I gagged Jessica's sign languages to Paul to use the voice, which at first doesn't work that well, but after finding the right pitch, he convinces a soldier to remove the gag on Jessica. Once removed, Jessica forces the soldier to off the other soldiers, and after a short brawl, all the soldiers are dead, with Paul and Jessica now free where they roam the desert back to the city which is burning. Within the city now, in the palace, we see a nude father with a eating Baron, who before talking to Father deals with the doctor, killing him as he did with the doctor's wife. Back to talking to Father, where Baron yaps about how he destroyed the House of Atreides, but Father, using the airborne poison, kills everyone in the room. Except now with Paul and Jessica, they figure out Father's dead, with Paul now having his ring, carrying on the lineage. Now out in the desert, Duncan meets with a doc, where he figures out the Emperor sent them there to die. So sad. Back to the poisoned room, men go inside to collect the bodies, but damn, the Baron still lives, being huddled up on the roof, like a great Australian huntsman spider. Paul now continues having visions of Zendaya and a battle in the desert with himself fighting against the Emperor's soldiers with blue eyes. And in another vision, he's seen him ruling over soldiers, and he yaps some prophecy. Then in the voice he freaks out Jessica, and I don't care about no wonkers. This is Timothy doing his best. +2 source point. Later on, Paul and Jessica decide to go on the move, where they are immediately found by Duncan, who takes them away in the aircraft, with the doc also being there. Once landed, the crew goes underground to an ecological testing station, and they are found immediately by the Emperor's soldiers, who are after the crew, but they have to fight through some Fremen first. Oh, that must not have been that hard. But now they have to go through Duncan, and he has plot armor. Duncan takes down the Emperor's soldiers, but he gets stabbed. So, yeah, I guess he didn't have plot armor. All but his backup, ready to kill. But once again, the plot armor wasn't good enough, as he's finally cut down a battle. But it was worth it, with the crew escaping, where Jessica and Paul split up from Doc. Once again, another epic scene, +1 source point. Now Paul and Jessica escape with another aircraft in the desert. Meanwhile, the Doc sets up a thumper to attract a sandworm, so she can ride it. But she is stabbed and attacked by 3 Emperor soldiers. So she bumps the ground a few times so the worm eats her and the 3 soldiers. Epic way to go out. I salute you, Doc. Back to the aircraft, Paul and Jessica are now being chased by other aircrafts. But to escape, Paul flies into a sandstorm where he has a vision of a man called Jamis, who speaks some inspiring words that helps Paul fly the aircraft through the storm until they crash land. The duo now walk across the desert, where they now change into the suits and move on till Paul has another vision of a date with Zendaya and him being with his future friend Jamis. Cool seeming guy. Jessica seems to spot where the Fremen may live, so Paul decides they'll do the goofy sandwalk over there in night because that is the Fremen way. But apparently they aren't well educated in the Fremen way, with a giant worm chasing them until it stops suddenly. It looks at a doorway with its mouth and pieces out once it hears the thumper. Now they meet the Fremen and the guy from before, from the meeting with Paul's father. The guy is called Stilgar, compliments Paul and offers him a place with the Fremen, despite Jamis disagreeing. Oh, and the catch is Paul must dit his mother. So the Fremen attack and Jessica protects herself with a knife against Stilgar, and Paul is up the cliff with a gun. Not that he would have done much, because Zendaya was behind him, ready to attack. But because Jessica showed off her skills in a fight, Stilgar allows her to stay and come with. But Jamis once again disagrees and wants to fight Jessica's champion, who is Paul. So now these future friends must fight. Preparing for the fight, Paul has visions of him losing and dying in the fight, but Zendaya gives Paul a crysknife. And now the fight begins. Jamis is quickly defeated by Paul, but he doesn't want to take Jamis's life. So he tells Jamis to yield, angering him. And this continues on for a while Jamis becomes a grumpy animal. Now Paul puts him down ultimately with a fatal stab to the back. I love how his visions of the future aren't concrete, and how Jamis could have been a friend, but he instead was just a foe. +2 source points. But now we reach the end of the film where the mother-son duo join the Fremen, where they use desert power and sandworms. But this is only
Beginning.
Was Dune 2021, a film that is just the beginning of a hopefully great movie series. But did the first film do great in the source points? Dune had gathered a total of 9 source points, and there was no negatives, no moldy mustards. So that's nice. Evening this out to, 9. And now that was FilmSauce Dune 2021. If you liked this video, consider subscribing, and maybe I'll see you again. Goodbye.